All right, guys. So awesome. So I do want to go ahead and talk about the junk knife page because I feel like, guys, we should all understand that the junk knife page is one of, if not the most important page in your entire presentation. Okay, and I want you guys to understand that. And the reason I want to review this, some of you might not have learned these things before. Some of you maybe you haven't thought about your demo for a while. I gave you a handout that we made this morning that you're going to want to use for the blank space to write in any tips or thoughts that you may or may not be doing. But I want to do my junk knife page. And then, we'll debrief what you got out of it. So, first off, everybody, why is the junk knife page critically important? Because if somebody sees your junk knife page and at the end of that page, they are not saying, I might need something new, then you're pacing towards a no-sale, right? The purpose of this page is to create the need, right? So ultimately, you've got to find a way to create the need on this page, okay? Now, I do want to say sometimes you run into people that have Wusthof or Hinkles, and I want to be clear. If they have high-quality Schoon, Wusthof, Hinkles, and you go over the junk knife page, well, as you go through the page the whole time, they're like, well, my knife doesn't have wooden handles. My knives don't have brass rivets. My knives don't have cheap stainless steel. They're not thinking that they even need anything different. So I'm going to start by telling you what to say if you see somebody that has good stuff, okay? So if you get to this page and they have good knives, you're going to go, well, Miss Jones, I'm not going to waste your time talking about junk, okay, because I can tell you appreciate quality. What I will say is that most people that have the high quality brands, what we typically hear is that they have to be constantly sharpened and they must be hand washed, right? Because they're designed for chefs, not families. So instead of wasting your time talking about junk, I'm going to talk about why most of my customers like yourself that have the high quality brands decide to replace what they have with Cutco. So I'll repeat that. And guys, by the way, you should be able to repeat the phrase, right, every single time the exact same way, right? So we start out, Ms. Jones, I'm not going to waste your time talking about junk because I can tell you appreciate quality. What I will say of what we hear from people that have the high quality brands is that they have to constantly be resharpened and hand washed because they're designed for chefs, not families. So instead of wasting your time talking about junk, I'll talk about why most of my customers, like yourself, that have the high quality brands, decide to replace what they have with Cutco. And then you flip the page. Is everybody with me there? All right. And that's it. Period. Plain and simple. By the way, you have to lead with that one phrase. Instead of wasting your time, you got to end with that one phrase. Instead of wasting your time talking about junk, I'll talk about why most people like yourself that have the high quality brands decide to replace what they have with Cutco today. Okay, now let me go to the junk knife page, okay, on the actual junk knife. So when you go into the beginning, right, you go now, Ms. Jones, does this look familiar to you? Okay, well, what do they normally say? Hey, does this look familiar? What do they say? Oh, yeah, that's what I have, right? Okay, and you go, what, Ms. Jones, don't feel bad because this is what most people have. This is actually the world's most expensive set of knives. And I know you might look at it and go, how is that the most expensive? But the reality is that these knives are designed with a philosophy called planned obsolescence, which is where they're designed to break down over and over and over again. In fact, Consumer Reports magazine found that the average kitchen knife is designed to break or go dull within 2 years. So the typical family will spend thousands of dollars on junk like this over a lifetime in the kitchen. Okay? And there are many disadvantages to a set of knives like this. And guys, what you're going to notice is I say the word set, by the way. I want you to listen to the set. I also want you guys to be paying attention to the nonverbals, okay, as I go through. But every point you want to say the word set. So, Ms. Jones, the first disadvantage are your sets that have wooden handles, okay? Now, wood looks really good when you first get it. But the downside to wood is that it tends to crack, fade, splinter. They're not designed to go in the dishwasher because wood is a very porous material, meaning it's like a sponge, so it soaks up everything, right? Ms. Jones, have you ever taken a wooden spoon and stirred cherry Kool-Aid with it? Yeah, you pull it out. What color is it, right? Same color as the Kool-Aid. So imagine, Ms. Jones, that you're cutting a chicken breast in the kitchen. You're like trimming the fat off, and most people lay their knife right there on the cutting board, right? So that chicken blood soaks into the handle. Right, that bacteria, salmonella, soaks into the handle. But see, unlike a sponge, wood can't be wrung out. Ms. Jones, if your hand ever gets hot in the kitchen and it gets sweaty, the sweat from your palm soaks into the handle. If the knife's laying out next to the stove and grease pops onto it, the grease soaks in the handle. And so on the outside, it looks nice. On the inside, Ms. Jones, they're actually festering with bacteria. Okay, in fact, Ms. Jones, the Food and Drug Administration, they actually banned wooden handle knives from being used in commercial restaurants because it links to salmonella and E. coli poisonings. University of Wisconsin did a study that found there's more germs inside your common wooden handle knife than there are on your toilet bowl. So wooden handles are very unsanitary. And Ms. Jones, the downside to sets like these is that they give you two options with your set. You can either go with unsanitary or you can go with unsafe. And that's where we have your plastic handle knives. Okay, we have your plastic handle knives. Okay, now I'm showing your plastic handle knives, they're sanitary, okay, but they're made, with the super cheap material. Okay, most of the plastic handles, if you don't see the rivets, by the way, they're glued together. Okay, where they take a plastic handle, steel blade, and glue, and they press it together. But see, in the dishwasher, the heat from the dishwasher wears that glue out. Okay, and then the pressure from you using it, and then eventually, boom, the blade can come out of the hand. Have you ever seen that happen before? Where like a blade, yeah, super dangerous. Okay, now if you do see rivets, Miss Jones, what's crazy, right? Like you see your knife right here. It does have the rivets. Okay, well, see if you tap this thing and you listen to it, it's actually hollow on the inside. So you look at it and you think, oh, it might be solid material. But if you crack this thing open, it's hollow on the inside. Eventually, these things crack, break, and they don't typically last real long. Also, Miss Jones, you remember when you were growing up, those slip and slides? The kids used to like run and dive on. Well, see, when plastic gets wet, it gets really slippery, and most people wash their hands before they get ready to prepare a meal. Your hand's a little moist. If the knife's dull, you press down, you can slip and cut you, and that can be dangerous as well. And it's kind of tough because, most knife companies leave you with the choice of unsanitary or unsafe. Now, the next disadvantage, Miss Jones, in your common sets is poor construction. See, a lot of cutlery companies design knives with a partial tang, right? Like you see this plastic handle knife right here. The steel probably in yours probably only comes down to about right here, okay? And the reason they do that is to save money because that's 2 to 3 inches of steel that they don't have to spend any money on, right? So the reality is over thousands of knives they make, that's lots of money that they save, and on the back end, they make more money because, see, when you have a partial tang, more pressure is distributed unevenly, and eventually one of the points will give if it has rivets or that glue wears out and then it breaks on you. And once again, that could be dangerous. Now, when you do see the rivets, a lot of these rivets, Miss Jones, are made out of brass, copper, stainless steel, super, super soft metals. And so what happens, Miss Jones, is that when they're in your dishwasher, okay, they get really hot and they expand and then they contract. And then they expand and then they contract, right? And then what happens is this little lip builds up around the outside. Like here, Miss Jones, take your finger and like rub it over that. You see how it kind of, your knife right there, how it like dips down, okay? Well, a lot of, you see that there's like a little slight ring around the outside of the rivet. What that is little food particles that have kind of gathered around the rivet. And a lot of times insects, cockroaches, ants, things like that, they'll feed off of that, which is super, super unsanitary as well. The next disadvantage, Miss Jones, are your sets that have carbon steel. Okay, now, the reality is that these were used like back in the day because, they wanted something that would work well. The good thing about carbon is that it's really hard. Okay, so when you put an edge on it, it stays sharp for a really, really, really long time. But the downside, Miss Jones, is that it rusts, it pits, it corrodes, and pitting is when little flakes of the knife comes off in your food. Now, I know you like to get your day allowance of iron, Miss Jones, but we don't recommend it from your cutlery. Ha, ha, ha. All right. Now, guys, I'm going to pause real quick, okay? The stainless steel is where you have to destroy it. 95% of the people that you see have stainless steel. So if you are not crushing stainless steel, you know, that's your biggest opportunity on the whole page to do a great job. Okay, so you really got to go off on this. So here we go. So Ms. Jones, the next disadvantage are your sets that have stainless steel. And so while carbon steel is hard, stainless steel is soft. Ms. Jones, what's the number one thing a knife should do? Yeah, the number one thing a knife should do is cut. And the funny thing is that most people out there have stainless steel knives that are super soft and prevent the knife from doing the number one thing that a knife should do, which is cut, right? Stainless steel is super, super soft, right? Ms. Jones, have you ever taken a spoon, dipped it in ice cream, and it bent a little bit, right? Well, think about it. If ice cream bends a spoon, think about what happens to the fine edge of your knife every time it comes in contact. By the way, guys, did you notice what I said right there? Think about what happens to look at my head knots, to the fine edge of your knife every time it comes in contact with a cutting board. Guys, I'm head nodding the entire appointment. The entire appointment. I'm using my nonverbals and tonality, and I'm tying it in. Just a little side note there if you're not noticing that. Okay, but Ms. Jones, it prevents knives from doing, you know, the number one thing that knives are supposed to do, which is cut. Okay, stainless steel is super soft. I use the ice cream. Ms. Jones, razor blades, right? You use them a couple times, boom, you got to throw them away. Hair dulls down a razor blade. So if hair dulls down a razor blade, think of what happens to the super fine edge of a knife every time it comes in contact with a cutting board, a bone, a plate. You know, and Ms. Jones, you know, there also are two different types of edges, right? First, you have your sets that have serrated edges, okay? And serrated edges, they rip and tear and just, and the worst part is that they make a rough cut and they can't be resharpened. So it dries out your meat. If you ever had dried out turkey during the holidays, it wasn't the way it was cooked, it was the way it was carved with an electric carver, which allowed the moisture to escape and dried out your meat, right? And then when they go dull, Ms. Jones, there's no way to maintain them. So you literally have to throw them away and go out and waste your money again and buy an entirely new set of knives because it is super unsafe to use a dull knife. In fact, Ms. Jones, you know, Boy Scouts have one of their sayings is that a dull knife is an accident waiting to happen. Okay, you know, in fact, Ms. Jones, the National Safety Council did a study and they found there was over 200,000 kitchen accidents a year, from slip and falls to fires to anything that happens in the kitchen, causing people to go to the emergency room. And the top two leading causes for kitchen accidents were, number one, using the wrong knife for a wrong job, but number two was using a dull knife. And the reason is you have to use more pressure, which gives you less control. So actually a sharp knife is way more safe than a dull one because you're always in control when you cut. So, Ms. Jones, here's the deal. I know that some of these features in your typical set of knives was important to you, but some of them weren't. But let me ask you, if you could design the perfect set of knives, what would you keep from going wrong to your set? Okay, you want them to stay sharp. Okay, you'd want them to be dishwasher safe. Okay, and sanitary. Okay, cool. Well, Ms. Jones, I'm going to ask you a trick question, and if you get this wrong, I'm never going to leave, okay? What do you think the answer to all your kitchen knife problems are? You're pretty sharp, Miss Jones. All right. So anyways, guys, that's the end of the junk knife page, okay? Guys, hopefully you got some value from there and some easy reminders on how to crush that page. Nobody should leave that page thinking my knives are fine unless they have Cutco. Keep that in mind. You're going to make a lot more sales.